Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 119 of ASBN Live. I'm Felicity Sivalingam, the manager of programming events, and I'm thrilled to have you all here today to talk about a topic and a session that touches on so much of our work here at ASBN. Our session today is Investing in the Next 7 Generations, a case study and framework. And I'm thrilled to bring on our first speaker, Kim Pate, the managing director of NDN Fund. Kim Pate is a descendant of the Eastern Band of Cherokee and Mississippi Choctaw tribes. Pate is the managing director of NDN Fund, the lending and investing arm of NDN Collective. NDN Fund, an emerging Native community development financial institution, provides integrated capital solutions and capacity for Native nations, Indigenous changemakers, community developers, and enterprises. NDN upholds the principles of regenerative and just economies that are both led by and serve Indigenous communities. Prior to joining NDN Collective, Pate helped develop and launch the Native CDFI Network, a trade association of Native community development and financial institutions. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Kim Pate.
Thank you so much. Just want to make sure you can all hear me. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So it is my pleasure to be here today, really as a supporter and champion of Redco. And you'll hear a lot about Redco from Clay in just a little bit. But before we get there, I wanted to tell you a bit about NDN Collective and what we bring to this conversation. First, I want to say also that I am a member of the American Sustainable Business Network, and it is both in that respect and as a supporter of Redco that I'm on this call today. So a little bit about NDN Collective. Our mission is really to build power. And recently we had a conversation at work about capacity building, which is one of the services that we offer to Indigenous communities trying to create solutions that produce powerful impacts for the future. And I said, what we're really doing is power building, not capacity building. And it's part of our mission that we build the collective power of Indigenous peoples, communities, and nations to exercise our inherent right to self-determination while fostering a world that is built on a foundation of justice and equity for all people on the planet. And our vision is that we will have a world that is just and equitable if we're able to effect our mission. Next slide. Our theory of change is that if we defend, develop, and decolonize individuals and communities throughout Indigenous places, that we'll be able to have Indigenous peoples, communities, and nations that are free from oppressive systems and are able to exercise our inherent right to self-determination that values interconnected relationships and systems between people, nature, society, and all living things. And what I love about this theory of change is that we're cognizant, and you'll see this echoed also in Clay's presentation about Redco, that we're meeting the needs of present generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that this interconnectedness of our relationships and systems between people, nature, society, and all living things is then recognized and acted on in all aspects of society. So we are able to turn the heads and change the hearts of all of society. And that in the end, we'll have a world that is just and equitable for all people on the planet. So this theory of change governs everything that we do at NDN Collective and is very much a part of the support we've given to Redco. Next slide. So really this is a organization to organization relationship, because there are many moving parts of Indian Collective, including NDN Fund, which is our emerging native CDFI, as you heard, and the lending and investment arm. But there's also other parts of Indian Collective, a grant making arm, direct action arms, and so on. And so we line up in a really elegant way with Redco at their organizational level as well. And we have a bunch of different relationships. And what I'm going to talk about today are really just those relationships related to investing. So support from our foundation and from Indian Fund has gone to the following Redco enterprises: Wolakota Buffalo Sanctuary, Wakpala, Rosebud Construction Company. And all of them are examples of how we're helping Redco build power to defend, develop, and decolonize in their own way on their own land. Next slide, please. So let's just talk a little bit about each one so you understand our take on this, and then you'll hear more about Wolakota in particular coming up next with Clay. So this regenerative buffalo range, which I had the joy of being present for the release of the buffalo last October, which was incredibly moving, and it was a subset of babies that were released that will eventually, right, become 1,000 herd strong. But it was just it was very special. So it is a dynamic project that is regenerating the indigenous ecosystems of land, people, and economy. Wolakota is a 28,000 acre bison restoration project on the Rosebud Reservation that is now the largest native owned and managed herd in the world. Wolakota is an impact driven project that addresses two of humanity's great existential crises: climate change and social inequity. Next slide. Wakpala. It's the plan for a 600-acre site located on tribal land near Mission, South Dakota. It includes a phased approach with housing, recreation, and business development, so just really multidimensional, able to serve many needs. And one thing we know about community facilities is that there's never enough of them in indigenous communities. And so many times they have to be multiple things to the community. But when you have the chance to plan this in a really intentional and community-driven way, that building does serve the needs of everyone in the community, or that set of buildings, or that entire complex. And in this case, we're talking about an entire complex, right? So there's going to be a planning process. They've already done their master plan for the site, several rounds of community input. So it's truly community-led, needs assessments, and an economic analysis, which is part of phase one. And then this phase also includes the creation of 10 single-family homes, retail space, and the Sicangu Innovation Center, which will be a multi-use community hub. Next slide. Rosebud Construction Company, looks like we're closing on that loan today, which is a certified, tribally owned enterprise that provides project management, design and build services, and construction services for various entities within the community, but also for the local municipalities, the state and federal governments. And they're designing and building quality, affordable building projects that are executed in line with Lakota values. What's so exciting about these three projects that we are supporting is that they line up so well with our theory of change and allow us to affect our mission while supporting theirs. Next slide. So I think you're going to be as excited as we are about what they're working on. And I'm just going to turn it over to Clay Colombe, who is the Sicangu, Lakota, and Nimiipuu CEO of Redco and the 7Gen ecosystem. Clay.
Thank you, Kim. And I want to give a thanks out to NDN as well as ASBN for hosting this for us. You guys have both been wonderful partners, as Kim has just described to us. So thank you very much. And how Matakiapi, Clay Colombe Machiapi. I'm Clay Colombe, the CEO of Redco, or the Rosebud Economic and Development Corporation. I am an enrolled Rosebud Sioux tribal member, or Sicangu Lakota in our native language. Also a descendant of a Nimiipuu on my mother's side, which is the Nez Perce tribe in Idaho. Again, very happy that you're all here and spending time with us to listen to us about it. Again, enrolled tribal member at Rosebud, born and raised there. Proud to have call it my home, and proud to be back working with our Oyate, or our tribe. I spent a lot of time, or the past 10 years off the reservation, working in Denver, Dallas as the chief lending officer at Native American Bank, looking to further my career, and being away brought back that passion of wanting to do well for our community, come back to the tribe and do some things, especially, seeing a lot of other tribes doing great things out there, which is a number of doing. Made me, always kept in touch with our former CEO, Weezypaw Little Elk. Saw the momentum that he and the staff created. Was humbled to, be asked to come, back and join it to continue doing this work, which is, gratefully important to our people. I remember growing up, seeing, a lot of struggles. My friends, relatives, people, and always, in the back of my mind wondering, what can I do to help this? Which, at sometimes it seemed pretty helpless. But after years go by, kind of looking at, reflecting on it, seeing, there's a lot of outside groups coming in, trying to help us, in certain ways, and thank them for that. But it was also coming from an outsider's perspective of how we need to change to fit into their world to fix our problems. And again, after, thinking on that, reflecting on it, and, discussions with a lot of our people, we need to change things our way and, lead them in our way to create the world that we want. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here at Redco and our ecosystems. And what we're trying to do that through what we call the 7Gen values, to bring our traditional values back into the context. Next slide, please. So we are, again, the Sicangu Lakota Oyate. Sicangu is the burnt eye nation. Our ancestors faced a massive fire and ran through it, so our generation, future generations can thrive. As I said before, Rosebud Sioux Tribe is the name given to us by our colonizers. We here at Redco are working actively to, revitalize the Lakota language and, refer to ourselves in our language, which again is Sicangu. That's another big part of the 7Gen movement. Next slide, please. So 7Gen, what is that? It's a duty to future generations. It's a Lakota philosophy that every major decision you make, or basically every decision you make, you need to look at how is this going to affect the next 7 generations of people, not just the current generation. The Sicangu Lakota Oyate has even put this in our tribal constitution, as you can see here, that every decision made by our tribal leaders needs to, take into account the next 7 generations. And, at Redco, we take that extremely seriously and do that in all of the planning that we do. So how we did that, basically try to come up with a 175-year vision of what are we going to look like. Right now we probably have about 35,000 tribal members living on the reservation. In 175 years that could be 500,000, which is pretty crazy to think about. But what can we do now to not only help our people currently, but to create that foundation for our generations to come and do it in a good way, so they can do things that we never dreamed possible. Which I think right now we're doing stuff that previous generations of Sicangu probably, hoped, but we didn't think would be possible. Next slide, please. So, in living the seven gen value, one of the key Lakota philosophies we look at is Watake, is kinship, relatedness, and interdependence. This is just the core tenet of seven gen. To live seven gen means to embrace interrelatedness, not just as people, but the way we are related to our surroundings, both the natural world and the human created world. Lakota, we believe, everything has a spirit. We are all related, or Matakia say in our language. This concept of interconnectedness applies to systems as well. That is why, as the tribe's economic arm, we understand creating jobs and generating revenue for the tribe wasn't good enough. We needed a more holistic approach that addressed underlying systems of our society and have a community development corporation and CDFI within that ecosystem. And also another reason, one of the things we do to help that 5 years ago, before it's been common now, we embraced the $15 minimum wage. We needed to ensure that everybody working for us has that living wage, again, to create that foundation of what's possible for you on a personal level. And while Dakia is a Lakota concept, it can be embraced by anyone. We have found our best, most impactful partners, both native and non-native, have been willing to embrace the interconnected nature of the ecosystems, systems of thinking, and being willing to listen to and put people first, which again, that's a key tenet of the 7gen plan. So 7gen investing requires great projects and great partners. These are the principles and core beliefs that were true, that enabled the success of Wolakota, our Buffalo Range. You see the 7gen in the middle, but it's got to be culturally aligned. It's got to embrace the interconnectedness, Indigenous-led. And that's not to say any project, all projects have to be Indigenous-led, but, being here in Sioux territory, we do that. But, when we look around, and ASBN and NDN, share this value of, including, BIPOC-led missions on this, and, getting us as, parts of society that never really had a seat at the table, make sure that we are there, we are heard, again, helping do this our way. And as Kim said, making an equal and just world for everyone. But, other parts of this are flexible people, centered funding, community-based, and early partnership and shared risk. So Wolakota, the world's largest indigenous bison herd, was officially launched in 2020, but was made possible of generations of work. I remember when Wheezy came, with this idea, it was like, wow, that is amazing. How the heck are we going to get this thing done? How did we get it done? We needed to raise over $5 million to complete major infrastructure projects to build up the herd. And that's on 28,000 acres of Sioux-owned land that we lease from the tribal government. After the lease, we needed to build the fencing and housing, which 28,000 acres is quite a lot of land, hired two full-time employees, and created a business plan and website that began to build a network to help seek funding. We had a great fortune and persistence. We received donated bison from several sources, with the main source being the Department of Interior's federally managed herd, which really meant a lot to us. It was great. As Kim mentioned, in October of 2020, the first bison were released at Wolakota, which is awesome because it's estimated that bison have been absent from that land for 140 years. And, most of you probably know that, bison was, the key part of the Lakota's way of life. So helping bring them back in such an impactful way, again, is near and dear to our hearts. Momentum is, continues through 2001. We've completed additional fencing and ranching infrastructure products, received hundreds of more donated bison, and by the end of 2021, Wolakota had become the largest native managed herd in the world, well ahead of schedule. We thought that would take at least up to 3 to 4 years. We expect to surpass 1,000 buffalo with our spring calf crop this year. And yeah, kind of like my thought in this, a A lot of people thought this was crazy until we did it. But a lot of hard work from not only our team, but the relationships that we've been able to build with external partners that, have, bought into our 7-gen philosophy. So again, Wolakota fits into everything of the 7-gen project with the vision and Wodake. It's culturally aligned. Lakota, we are Buffalo people. Our entire economy and way of life was built around the buffalo. Buffalo were killed as a way to control us and forced us onto reservations, made us dependent. Again, I don't think it can be overstated on how disastrous that was to our way of life. And, a lot of our people losing, just that foundation of how we live and, forced into a completely new way of life that we obviously didn't want. But, and those impacts are still felt today. Again, one of the things, on empower or where we focus our work on. Wolakota is reclaiming the sacred relationship. Buffalo, when the Buffalo are strong, the Lakota were strong again. So that's a key tenet of why we're doing this. It's community based. We, did a lot of community surveys, finding out what's important to our people. Not just, a good leader in the Lakota way. I think anywhere, has to listen to the people to make sure you're seeing every angle on this to see what's important to people, not just what we see as important. But a lot of people wanted the Buffalo to play a larger role in their life, from food to spirituality. So surveys show bringing back buffalo is nearly universally supported by Lakota people. Again, indigenously led. Redco, which the parent company for Wolakota, is an arm and entity of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, as mentioned. We maintain 100% of the decision-making power that goes on and at Wolakota, and retain any and all profits that are to be earned. Redco is accountable to the citizens of the Sicango Viate. We need to ensure this project improves their life in tangible ways. And Wolakota is managed for economic, social, ecological, and cultural outcomes, which we call, consider a quadruple bottom line. But again, getting back to the 7-gen thing, it needs to meet all of these factors for us to live up to that. And we working to hold ourselves extremely accountable for that. So vision plus Wodake equals Wolakota, the 7-gen investment success. Again, with bison donated from 7 different federal herds, 3 different private herds. The support on this thing has been great. These relationships that we've been able to cultivate by working on this project have been amazing. We've received investments in the form of federal funding, foundation grants, PRIs, impact loans, blended capital, and technical assistance. I mean, this, again, kind of one of the few, or if not first of the kind of what we're doing, just in creating the herd, but also in how we're doing it with the 7-gen. So it took again, these relationships that I'll keep pointing out to help us get it done, because we truly value the support of all of our partners, but we'd like to highlight the partnership of 2 organizations in particular. First is the Turner Foundation. In addition to being among the first foundations to offer support of the project, the folks at the foundation have also ensured that we are connected with their counterpart at Turner Ranch, which is the largest bison ranching entity in the world. Their industry knowledge and technical assistance has been invaluable to running the ranch. We have hired some, 2 amazing people on that. Again, we need, a herd this size on our land hasn't been there in 140 years, which when it was basically self-managed. So now us being in it, we need this, these relationships to help ensure that we're doing it in a good way. We're doing what's best, not only for our people, but for the bison Oyate. So, but there was even a more unique and impressive way that the Turner team continued to think outside the box about their sport. Multiple occasions, their executive director, Troy Edel, asked, "What else can we be doing to support you?" He took the time to learn about our other initiatives and get to know our team outside of just Wolakota, as we have a lot going on. Last year, thanks to his advocacy, the Turner Foundation and National Recreation Foundation provided support that allowed us to pilot youth summer camps that were centered around bison and traditional Lakota knowledge. This year, we plan to expand those camps to even reach more youth. This is what we mean by embracing interconnectedness. Turn it into see Wolakota as a Buffalo project, but as a community impact project that will have ripple effects in the way that ways that we cannot predict. Wolakota is simply the entry point to even a greater impact. Next slide. Another great partner with us has been WWF. They've been there since before the project began. Pre-2018, the idea of it and concept was done internally. We got the introduction to the World Wildlife Fund. Early 2019, they made introductions to us for industry partners and foundations, then went on to their funds and contract. They funded a feasibility study for us late 2019, provided more support in developing a specific proposal, which by early 2020, Redco, we created a business plan with technical assistance from the WWF and their industry contacts. And also then in early 2020, WWF helped fund us for our first year's lease, which is the amount of $270,000, which again is going to our tribal government, which is, makes this project even better. And like any good relationship, WWF is, continues to be there for us. They made warm introductions to investors, federal contacts, and additional industry partners. Late 2020, our trusted partners helped share and refine our pitch. And then from there to present, the WWF comms team drafts and disseminates joint press releases and facilitates various media and panel appearances. Their staff continue to have regular meetings with our team, staying engaged, ensuring the success of this product or project, by looking at our ongoing needs and ways to support. They always have seek innovative ways to support the project ecosystem, encourages others to do the same. So again, back to our 7-gen investing, what it requires, everything there again. But as I've pointed out, you need great projects, but also great partners. These relationships are absolutely needed. And again, the principles and core beliefs of what are true that enable the success of Wolakota. Wichosani requires a system, folks. Wichosani, or the good way of life in Lakota, requires the systems approach. Wolakota has been a microcosm for our ecosystem. This has brought about a new and exciting opportunities for collaboration that we hadn't imagined when starting the project. We've hosted students at the ranch, conducted community harvests that allowed us to become leaders in farm to school. We have our immersion school, which NDN has also helped us on. Thank you for that again, Kim. Is raising the standards for education while revitalizing our language and efforts. Our food sovereignty work is creating a just and sustainable food system for our Oyate. Again, everything on the screen here is interconnected, and we work as it to bring it all together for the betterment of our people as much as we can. But Wolakota is a 7-gen project, but for real deep impactful changes that disrupts colonial systems and transforms community, we need an entire systems-based approach to rapidly bring about that change, to bring about Wichosani, which at the end of the day is really what this is all about. Wichosani is what we all want for ourselves, our families, our kids, their grandkids, about a good life, a healthy life, and generate life of abundance. Next slide, please. With the success we've had here, we've obviously you come across stumbling blocks like everybody else, but we've getting it done. And we have to say, if we can do it here, it can be done anywhere. UN Development Index rated Todd County, which is made up entirely of the Rosebud Reservation, as the worst county to live in the United States. These numbers are a reality. You can see them up here, from our median income being $22,000, 83% unemployment rate, 60% high school completion rate, college completion rate of 5%, and a housing need of over 3,000 homes, which is probably low. I know, speaking with our housing authority, the waiting list on our houses is so long. Some people have just given up on even trying to apply. But there's a reason we don't start with this. It isn't who we are. It's a situation we find ourselves in. We are Sicangu. Our people have been through a lot. We continue to go through a lot, and we use that strength of our ancestors to continue to drive our work that we're doing. But we have to have the vision and, you know, help create this better world. But again, got to recognize these facts. But you know, you ask the people that live there, it's nobody would rate it the worst place in the world to live. It's our home. It's our community. It's our Oyate. We're very proud of it. But we do again have these, you know, barriers and obstacles that are put in front of us, but they are not going to stop us. You know, our local solutions to global platforms, basically what we're looking at. We believe our projects and approaches are translatable to other Indigenous communities, rural communities, impoverished communities, and beyond. It should not be carbon copy, but are translatable. Again, doing it our way, what's best for our people, but the 7-gen approach, I think, again, can work to help everybody on the planet. Next slide. So 7-gen vision and Wolakota equal transformational change. We have a vision, a healthy, just, abundant world for our grandchildren and yours. You know, same as NDN. We're looking to do this for everybody. We need allies, relatives who embrace our vision and the Wolakota approach. So let's, we can create this world we want our grandchildren to live in. Again, the 7-gen vision, what it stands for, has to power and shape coming generations. We're eternally grateful for all the prayers and sacrifice that our ancestors made so far that we could be here today in this moment doing these things. And we recognize that we have the responsibility today to do the same for those who will come after us, so that one day when they look back at the same time period, they'll be proud and grateful of our prayers and our sacrifice, and be willing to do that again for the generations that follow them. Our work, our approach is to better lives for all of our Sicangu relatives. But in doing so, we know we're creating a better world for all relatives, be they Indigenous or not. When Indigenous nations and Indigenous people are healthy and strong, we will all be healthy and strong. The word Lakota is literally translated as allies or friends, people who act as true relatives. And that's what we are looking to do to help bringing this vision alive, not just partners, but new relatives, you know, deep relationships. That's how this deep and lasting change will be made. Next slide, please. So Wopila, thank you. And immeasurable gratitude for the time that from our partners, our relationships, from everybody for joining us today. And on the screen here, you can see, and we'll be putting in the chat, you know, email address to get in touch with us, to learn how you can, you know, be part of the 7-gen movement with us. You know, we're also open to not just emails, phone calls, but in-person contact. You know, love to welcome people out to the reservation. We do have an in-person investment summit happening at the end of this month, and we're looking forward to connecting with all of our partners there, and hopefully see if people on the call can commit to a future summit. But yes, we have a lot of great things going on here. Again, thank you for being able to share what we're doing with us.
Thank you for that presentation, Clay. I just want to remind everyone, I put in the chat that Clay and Kim will be taking questions from the audience. So if you have any, please put them in the Q&A box that you see at the bottom of your screen, and we can address those as soon as we get them. Kim, is there anything you want to add, or any other color you want to add to the project?
You know, I did want to just mention that in addition to the front end of the investing side of these projects, we're also looking at evaluation metrics that we're going to align across our 2 ecosystems, so that we're able to really track the impact of Indian Foundation's investment, of NDN Fund's loan, and kind of flow all of what's happening at the ground level in these projects and enterprises that we're supporting up into both of our theories of change, so that we're able to explain, hopefully with numbers and visuals, the things we've been able to do together to protect future generations, because the time is now, and we need to know if we're having the intended impact, and we need to be able to share that impact and inspire other Indigenous communities. I happen to also be on the board of the Nez Perce CDFI Nimipu Fund. So everything that Redco is doing is a model for work that could be happening here on the Nez Perce Reservation, which is also, you know, one part of Clay's background as well. So there's just really wonderful alignment synergies happening across Indian country as we are able to share really the ideas for solutions that are innovative and scalable and that can be replicated.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Kim. I mean, that's, you know, part of what we're doing obviously too is, you know, tracking everything we're doing, you know, make sure again, it is having the intended impact, and, you know, NDN through, you know, helping us, you know, build our, the power building, Kim, which I love that saying, you know, allows us to do that. And, you know, because we do have a ton going on, you have to be able to measure the impact that it's having. You know, one, make sure it's going the way we want it to. If not, you need to potentially pivot, but again, to show our community that what is our work actually doing. And, you know, obviously everybody knows, you know, the more data you have, the more, you know, better decisions you can make going forward and be able to see, you know, exactly where you're going.
We have a question that's come in from the audience. Kate asks, how did you imbue your investment terms and documents with the 7 generations approach?
You say that first part again, sorry.
How did you imbue your investment terms and documents with the 7 generation approach?
So yeah, again, one of the main things on that we looked at, especially for these, the documents, one, to ensure they weren't very extractive on it, you know, to keep the resources here. We looked for, you know, extremely good terms. Our, you know, working with the WWF and Turner allowed us to kind of look at that in a whole new ways. You know, in past, you know, we're always grateful just to, you know, receive any kind of investment, which we are, but now we're being more strategic on that to ensure that not only is this going to help get our project completed to where we are, but on terms that are, you know, extremely favorable, you know, to us, and to, you know, ensure the sustainability of the project and of, you know, our people as a whole. But yeah, again, with that, we looked, there was a lot of different ways that we did. Seemed like we're, you know, looking, almost creating some of these new ones, but the, you know, blended capital with grants, unrestricted funding, again, to allow us to, you know, manage this project in the way that we see, you know, that we see best for our people. So it was quite the experience, especially, you know, coming from a financial background as I did, you know, kind of think out of the box, which I always thought I did, but, you know, we really did that on this project, which was great.
And I would just say on the NDN Fund side, you know, we've indigenized all of our lending practices from our resilience impact assessment, which sets a baseline for, you know, where a potential borrower is on a scale of different dimensions of resilience, right? And how does the community show up in there? How do cultural practices show up in there? And other important parts of decolonizing financial products and services. So our approach, it's not the 7 generations approach, it's the resilience impact approach, but they are really nicely parallel with each other, which is one of the main reasons why we are making investments in Redco. So Redco is the perfect model of a borrower that we are interested in. So yeah, thank you for asking that question, Kate.
Thank you. The next question we have from an attendee is, what is the community benefit mechanism? Is it tax revenues from business income, a dividend to local households, or something else?
It's, you know, one, keeping more of the, you know, money on the reservation, staying there. You know, right now, in the past, haven't had a lot of, you know, services, you know, stores. People have to leave the reservation for that. So one, keeping that money local. Obviously, more money that's spent locally stays locally, not only through jobs, but looking to eventually support our people to become entrepreneurs, create their own businesses. Redco doesn't want to own all of the businesses on the reservation. We eventually build this foundation so people can do that. But the profits that we do make, yes, we're reinvesting into hiring more people, giving money to the tribal government to provide more services for people, such as housing, energy assistance, food assistance, and whatnot.
Thank you, Clay. Kate asks, what is the ideal size for the herd?
Right now, with where we're with the 28,000 acres and where we're at, it's going to be around about where we're at now. We're about at where the capacity is 1,000 to up to 1,500 at the most.
Okay. As a reminder, you can put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom, and Clay and Kim will be able to answer them. Anne asks, she would actually like to hear more about the Kea Wakpala development and what further resources are needed for that.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so the Kea Wakpala development, west of Mission, South Dakota, one of the larger communities on the reservation, has been a project that we've been working on for a number of years. Our former CEO, Weezy Little, had this idea of taking basically the 7-gen framework and putting into a whole new development. We have housing developments here or there, but looking for more of a new, the community feel. So we're basing it around the tribally owned grocery store. Again, we're looking to build 10 homes this year, want to get that up to 200, but also need to have the other parts of the community, like the Sichangu Innovation Center, which would be a community center, a resource for our entrepreneurs and community members there, building out additional retail space for community members to be able to launch their own businesses, something that is sorely needed. As you can imagine, developing basically an entire new town takes a lot of work. One of the bigger struggles in that is the infrastructure for it. Finding funding for that has been incredibly difficult. Where we have had success is in the building of our power or our capacity. We've been getting funding to bring on new employees to help design. There's just a ton of work involved in this. Every time we take a step forward, it is kind of daunting to see everything else that we have there. But again, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. We're not looking for these generational changes for people. And as I said earlier, I have at least a 3,000 house need on the reservation. If we create 200 of them there, that's a start. But kind of like with Wolakota, when we created that, it led to things that outcomes that we didn't even think of that were great, positive outcomes. And we know that the same will happen here by providing that foundation for our community to grow and have the resources that we haven't had in generations. And
if you look in the chat, there's a link that's dropped in there about that Kea Wakpala project. Leola asks,
information out there. Obviously, our email address is out there. If people want to hear more, we're happy to communicate with you on that.
Great. Next question we have is from Leila, who asks, when will Indigenous people be able to eat and use buffalo hides like before?
That's a great question. So the first step of what we're doing, obviously, is just building and maintaining the herd. We'll be looking, to do that. We're in years 2 right now, getting into that. In order to do this a good way, to make sure for the health of the bison, we'll look to start doing that hopefully around year 5.
And Andrea asks, how do we find out about the investment forum you mentioned?
Reach out to us at the email address that's being put into the chat and was in the presentation. We can get you more information on that.
Perfect. Can put that in one more time. So we have an interesting question from Jennifer, who asks, what typical beliefs and ideas do funders usually have that we need to question and unpack in order to be a good partner in Indian country?
I think looking at the, looking at the total impact of what's being doing, not just, financial returns on some of these is a big one. Again, people, different foundations have, different, I guess, the models they've used, looking at a certain return. And again, everything that we look at isn't just on financial return, it's the impact of the community. Again, can't say 7 gen enough. What's the impact it's going to bring for our people in the next 7 generations? So I think looking at that and just, basically changing a world is what you can do, helping with us, not just, looking at any type of returns or traditional investments that have been structures that have been made. But as we're doing this, it's kind of brand new. We do continue to find new ways of doing this, and it's I got to thank the relationships we have with our current partners on finding these things. We aren't creating all of these ourselves, but looking at it through our eyes has helped us create these, and look forward to doing that again.
Yeah, I would just add that it really takes a long time to build these important relationships, whether it's with the funders or with the partners or in the local community. And then, we do have tribal councils, and we have to work on those schedules, right, to make a lot of decisions. And I saw that there's a question about governance processes. So yeah, I mean, it's a very important value to give things time to get to where they need to be for longevity.
Yeah. One other thing I would put in that too is, again, for these Indigenous-owned projects, just making sure, again, like one of the points I made earlier of listening to the people that you're in that project, making sure it's what they need, it's what they want, it's the a step towards the future that they're trying to create. Not being able to detach these preconceptions that you bring on, hey, this is going to make that community better. Ask that question, is that really what it is? But before asking questions, the listening of just where understanding where the people are coming from, what their values are, where they want to go. That's an extremely important part of it.
Thank you for that. Kate asks, how is the community involved in the ongoing management of the project?
So we continually try to get feedback from the community. Obviously, being managed, the project is strictly done within our organization, but again, reaching out to people, trying to have community surveys, community listening sessions to get that input. Our Socioeconomic people are never shy to share their opinion, which I love, and get feedback from my tribal council members, community members, reaching out to our organization. But again, also us, deliberately putting out surveys, hosting, events to get that feedback.
And why that's so important is it's the entire community, right? It's the tribal council members, it's the Office of Legal Services, it's police, it's land preservation, it's housing, it's all of the various parts of the tribal community that all need to be brought into the conversation at key junctures, and ideally at the same junctures. And that's how you build the consensus that you need to make sure that community members writ large are part of the ongoing management of the project, because so much of what we do is interconnected, right, across all of the different agencies in a tribal community. And there's this certain level of buy-in that you just have to have, especially when you think about the fact that our tribal councils are term limited and sometimes are only 2-year terms So your decision makers are turning over completely in some cases every 2 years, which makes long-term innovative solutions harder to sort of stick if you don't have other supports, right, from across the community that are already bought in and champions.
I'd just add to that, Kim, too. That's a great point on the, the turnover on tribal councils. The working with tribal councils from outside entities has usually been a struggle in most of my life. Even as that Native American bank, trying to, again, coming with that outside approach and making the tribal community fit into, this Western colonized way of life. It doesn't always work, and that's probably why we've had the centuries of struggle with this. So again, coming back to working with the communities, with the tribes on how to get it done, finding that way, because it can get done. And in part, a lot of it is just listening to concerns. We've had going back to the treaties, signed some pretty horrendous deals in our time, and that continues to this day to make people not trust outside outside organizations. Just recognizing that's a reality. It's most people not in Indian country wouldn't even think of that, and that's you've never been exposed to it. You wouldn't. But understanding that point of view of I remember hearing people say, why they got to be so difficult. It's like, because they're looking out for our people, and we've been screwed over on some deals, and they might not even know that consciously, but subconsciously that's in our DNA. And again, working to find common ground, and being able to to give a little on some of that to help us get these projects done. At the end of the day, when we get into these agreements, that's our word. We want to obviously get the project done, but live up to our end of the bargain. We're not looking for creative ways to to get over on somebody on a contract. We're just trying to look out what's best for us and do it as best our way.
Appreciate that, Clay. If we don't have any further questions, Kim, Clay, are there any parting words you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, one is kind of readdressing one of the questions I think I forgot, on when, the bison will be available to the people. I was thinking more, on our plan, around year 5, kind of, getting it out there more, but we've already started doing that through our farm to school work, doing, work with the people, looking at harvesting the buffalo with a mobile market. So it is in a way we are doing it already, just not at a very large scale. So.
And I just want to say thank you to the funders that are on this call. I've noticed in the chat some familiar names, and thank you for what you do for Indian Collective and NDN Fund that allows us to work with Redco and other really, I think, forward-thinking Native-led organizations. As a Native-led organization ourselves, it's really important for us to be able to do the right thing and be a good relative as a supporter, and your funding has allowed us to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Wolakota, thank you again from again, these relationships with NDN, ASBN, and a lot of the funders, some obviously are on this call. We are very grateful for your help to allow us to continue the work that we are doing, which means so much to our people. So again, Wolakota, thank you.
Thank you, Clay and Kim, for being here for this wonderful presentation. I encourage everyone to check out the links, reach out to the email that we've put in the chat to learn more and get involved. In the meantime, we'll be sharing a recording of this session on our website at asbnetwork.org. And we welcome you all to join us next week. And for now, thank you all for joining. Bye, everybody.
Thanks again.